cheer the heck out of this after it's done. Yay. Okay, now I got to get back to the window I was on. Okay, we're good. Yeah, so Faith is a pixel horror game inspired by the era of classic gaming and the Satanic Scare of the 1980s, and it was released last year in October. So by December 2017, first off, I kind of have a loose definition of success for an indie game. When it came to me, I developed this over a few years when I wasn't working my day job, and usually in the hours of 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, and whatever else time I could squeeze in. And it was made just one person on the Game Maker engine, and because that's really just the knowledge that I had, and literally a shoestring marketing budget. But it did get picked up, got featured on a couple of sites, and a couple of streamers and YouTubers played it. On December 18th, 2017, Faith appeared on IGN's list of the best horror games of 2017, alongside Resident Evil 7 and like Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, Outlast 2, and The Evil Within 2. And I'm not saying that to brag, but I'm saying this to kind of illustrate one of the points of my talk. So this is a character from Resident Evil 7, and this is a character from Faith. So the difference in graphics is pretty drastic, and Faith arguably had the most basic graphics of the 18 titles featured. Maybe it was tied with Scott Cawthon's latest incarnation of the FNAF universe. And so to talk about Faith, really, I need to talk about the simple challenge that I gave myself a few years ago, and that was to deliver a horror game experience using the most basic graphics that I could think of. This was right around the time when the playable teaser for Silent Hills, the ill-fated Silent Hills, rest in peace, came out for the PlayStation 4, and the game really blew me away. And around that time, there were these kind of PT-esque spiritual successors that were being developed. Visage, or Visage, again, the pronunciation, is out now in early access, and I'm very glad it's out. And I kind of wanted to do something like that because PT really resonated with me, but I didn't have the knowledge or the funds or the technology or anything to really work on cutting-edge graphics on par with the Fox engine. I myself am a huge fan of retro games. If you see me around my circle of friends, like, they all have modern systems and they all enjoy the more modern games, and I'm still talking about games on like the Commodore 64 and older games like that. I grew up on the NES, and I never owned a console that was later than the N64. Although I do enjoy modern games, I have a more modern PC, I suppose. But I always find myself going back to the classics, to the more especially the more obscure retro titles. I really admire how devs could do so much with so little. So I chose an aesthetic for Faith that was somewhere between the Atari 2600 and MS-DOS games and the Apple II and ZX Spectrum. I challenged myself, could a game that looked like OG Oregon Trail feel like PT, which was this amazing horror experience to me? So I went to work. So Faith is inspired by the Satanic Scare, which was a moral panic that took place in North America and, to some extent, Europe during the 80s and the 90s. And, just a warning, I'm not an expert on anything I'm going to talk about historically here. So I always have someone, like, I've done podcasts and stuff, and I always have get angry emails afterwards and be like, well, it was really like this. You don't really know. You're right. I don't know. But I did do 2 years in the 80s, so that's my experience. Is there anyone, by show of hands, who was born before 1990? Okay, so y'all can school me on the stuff that I can say. Everyone else, you don't have authority. So this was a moral panic regarding kind of things that kids were starting to get into, like rock music. This is the face of Lucifer up there. I'm sorry, but it's true. And also role-playing games, specifically D&D, took a lot of flack. And the Church of Satan was actually kind of in the U.S. was popularizing. There were celebrities who were openly members, and there was panic regarding that, and also scares about drugs and also child safety. And the most high-profile example of this moral panic was the McMartin preschool trial. There was counts of alleged abuse of children at the hands of a satanic cult, and it was sensationalized by the media. And to make it more complicated, you had these patterns of psychologists and investigators basically drawing out accusations from children who were under hypnosis. And so the children, they talked about things like there were secret tunnels under the school that they would drag the children into. And if you look over here, those boxes, they're like these hollow boxes in the playground, and that's what the school children called the tunnels. So there was some truth to it, but it was sensationalized and blown up by these investigators who hypnotized the children. And there were several more investigations into preschools. And so to understand faith, you have to understand this era, and to understand this era, there's a little bit of context. In the 60s and 70s, you had actual killers and individuals who said that they killed or had other people killed for Satan, they said, and it was also coming off of the debut of The Exorcist, so Satan and the Catholic version of satanic or spiritual warfare was popularized. And then to some extent, you had the sexual revolution. There was a lot of panic and distrust towards not only sexual openness, I guess you would call it, but also sexual deviance. And it was threatening to the established family dynamic in North America. So and you did actually have individuals who carried out atrocities, they said, in the name of Satan. Of course, the media focused on the satanic elements, but not on things like mental illness or how they were, or like social isolation and just generally being rejected by the popular society. And then it was even more complicated in that era because you had clergymen who started to be discovered having abused children, and so there were atrocities committed by people that society didn't trust and people that society thought they could trust, and this was really a very complicated time. And so general themes of like fear and paranoia, isolation, and a disconnect from an entire generation. And it was a distrust on a level comparable to McCarthyism, and you had this attack on the traditional nuclear family during what should have been their decade of excess. Like, it could happen to you. And all this was the backdrop for faith. I myself am a big fan of supernatural horror. It's my favorite kind of horror. And coming from a religious background myself, I injected spirituality and kind of this Hollywood version of Christianity versus evil, but faith itself isn't meant to be preachy. It's supposed to be ambiguous, kind of like this era was. It was a lot of mistrust and uncertainty. Faith specifically can be interpreted how the player wants. Artistically, I had a few specific works that I worked off of. I really like this painting by Andrew Wyeth called Christina's World. I like the themes of isolation, tension, and there's this kind of this minimalism of the arranged objects. Faith has a lot of that. And then Francisco de Goya, my favorite painter, his series of the black paintings were these kind of macabre images that Goya had a real talent for carving out or calling out of the darkness, out of these fields of black. And that's one of the main reasons why Faith itself has a permanent black background. And of course, you can't have body horror in a game without being inspired by Junji Ito, the manga artist or manga artist. These grotesque, distorted figures were really appealing to me when I was designing Faith. There's some real life inspiration too. I lived in Argentina for a couple of years, and I discovered this really cool culture. There were people who practice Umbanda and Kimbanda, which is a religious tradition that kind of mixes African influence that was brought over on the slave ships and then mixed with Catholicism. So it's this really very different, very interesting branch of worship. And while I was living among them, I would interview them and talk to them and get to know them. And I only saw a tiny sliver of their world, so I don't claim to be an expert, but they did do things like ritualistic animal sacrifice. There's some voodoo influence, particularly in Candomblé, which you can find through the Caribbean and elsewhere. And they didn't offer sacrifices to the devil. It was more like they offered sacrifice toward the devil. So it wasn't devil worship, but there was a lot of stuff like that. And there's this group in the game Faith. It's not based off of them, but I basically made up a cult or a religion that could fit into the world of the Satanic Scare. So I mean no disrespect, but I wanted to break away from kind of the Hollywood's take on spiritual warfare, like the pentagram and the goat's heads and the 666. To me, that's kind of cheesy by now, so I wanted something that was a little more grounded in reality. And I took a lot of reference, but this game takes place in the 80s, but it's not like the like the pop culturalized blue and pink neon saturated retro wave version of the 80s. There wasn't any of that from what I remember. So no to this, but yes to this. I studied a lot of 80s architecture. No DeLoreans, please. But I looked up, not that DeLoreans aren't great, but I went with, just the normal people's sedan that they drove. And I also kind of rejected this image of the super 80s punk aesthetic. And I went with total squares who still dress like they were in the 70s, because I found out that in researching how I would represent this era, I actually found myself going back to the 70s almost as much as I was in the 80s. And so I imagined a modern Western family in a nice, gigantic house, and the parents still dress like they were from the 70s, and they dress their kids like they were from the 70s. So I believe in putting a little truth into into games, especially in horror games. It can make them a little scarier. There's actually a note in the game that is a page from my journal from when I was in South America. So minimalist horror, Faith has been called this in a few of the reviews that have been published. So I didn't want to rely on an onslaught of cheap jump scares. Not that jump scares aren't bad. A few big scares are kind of essential to good horror media, in my opinion. But I gave myself the challenge of inducing dread and fear with such a small resolution. So I had to focus on things like abstraction and fear of the unknown, which worked really well with the resolution that I was working with. And it was actually a challenge not to overproduce my sprites and my environment. I had to think not in terms of like not representational enough to just enough detail to represent objects and characters. Things like negative space really helped me out. There's some big themes of isolation here on the left, and on the right I used negative space to create a sense of anticipation and suspense with the mannequins. Can't have a horror game without mannequins, right? And then I have these rotoscoped animations that kind of brought in some uncanniness. Uncanniness being the disturbing nature of things that approach being lifelike, but they aren't. So I use these rotoscoped animations at certain parts of the game to betray players' expectations of what they think they're used to. OG Resident Evil was really good at this, even more so in the HD remake. And I wanted to lull players into thinking they've figured out the visual themes of the game and then surprising them. And my inspiration was this accolade from The Witch from 2015. Feels like we're watching something we should not be seeing. So that was my inspiration. So these were the results. This was from a Twitch stream on Vinesauce, and Vinny played it, and he played the demo for Chapter 2. So again, I don't do this. I don't show this to brag, but I do show it to show that I'm pleased that it appears the game accomplished its mission of scaring with very little. And it supports the biggest point that I want to make about this talk, is that horror games don't need amazing graphics to be scary. Now, I do enjoy horror games that have cutting-edge graphics. I personally really enjoyed Resident Evil 7. Outlast 2 was pretty good. PT, obviously. But there is this small emerging movement of what Paste Magazine called retrograde horror games. And a lot of the authors, I don't know if anyone's played Nun Massacre recently. He did Power Drill Massacre. He does a lot of massacres. But that has the kind of a PlayStation 1 aesthetic. Scott Cawthon, to some degree with the FNAF series, there's a lot of those mini games that look like they belong on the Atari. But there is kind of this, I would call it a movement of rejecting the need for high fidelity graphics to deliver scares, but instead focusing more on atmosphere, inducing a feeling of dread and suspense and fear of the unknown. And my hope is to inspire other creators to join us, especially those who want to get into game design and game development, particularly horror games, but don't have the resources to implement cutting-edge visuals. We are here to say you don't need them. But there are many factors that contribute to an effective horror experience. In my case with Faith, less appeared to be more. And also constraints can make you free. That's another point I want y'all to take home with this game and this talk. Constraints can make you free from being overwhelmed by an out-of-control scope. A lot of us who are devs can relate to overscoping projects or having a fear of overscoping. And constraints can make us free from artist's block. So having set rules that seem rigid and constraining at first can actually give you good ideas when you don't know how to proceed. Constraints can also make you free from the knowledge, the funds, the time, etc., required to produce cutting-edge graphics. So the future, I am working on a sequel, and there's a demo out on Itch.io, GameJolt, and IndieDB. I am hopefully going to work on Chapter 2 and finish it sometime this year. For now, I'm playing, promoting, and creating retro game horror games and encouraging people to join us in our journey. The game is actually going to be at the Witch House party tonight. It's also on the machines downstairs, and it's also at these outlets. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Mason? I'm also going to bring up to the stage our friend Stefanie, who's got a game called Diana the Huntress that's going to be at the party tonight. She was nice enough to run over here. I had the wrong phone number for her this whole time, so she didn't know she was going to have to give a panel, so take it easy on her. Do you have any questions for Mason? Can't tell if that's a hand in the back or just somebody shielding their face.
Works for me.
Come check it out. Oh, wait, there is one. Okay, Adam has one.
I made a minimalist horror game one time, and it was like incredibly satisfying. So I really I think it's good to invite people. Like, there's a thing about the unknown that's like so scary, and it turns out if you just don't draw anything, like all of it's unknown and everything's terrifying. But I had two questions. One was, what were the main places where you felt like, crap, I really wish I could have like, there's a thing I want to do, and the form factor that I've chosen, even though it's given me all these opportunities I wouldn't normally have, what's some of the things I couldn't do that I wish I could have done, and then I know we need to get to other games, but also if there was anything about audio that you found was particularly effective, I would love to hear about that too, because our thing ended up having to be, we were just like, oh, we didn't draw anything, so everything has to be sounds, actually.
Yeah, those are great questions, and I have quick answers. I promise. The places where I wish I could have expanded if I didn't have these constraints would be first person. I am a huge fan of first person games, and especially found footage movies. They're often very poorly executed, but I love there's a few real gems, Blair Witch being one of them, the first one, Blair Witch Project. And so I would have really liked to introduce first-person sequences. The best I could do were a couple of these rotoscoped animations. There's one in particular that's not in the presentation that you'll have to kind of see for yourself, but it seems very effective when you first see it to a lot of players. Second, the audio. So I used, y'all heard my 70s era speech synthesizer singing a religious hymn when I first started. So that was I used a kind of emulated version of an abandonware text-to-speech synthesizer to do a lot of the audio, and the fact that it's speaking human words that sound human, but it's most definitely a machine, is very unsettling to a lot of people. So that worked to my advantage. And for the audio, I just stuck with square wave stuff. And it was really hard to find music that sounded scary. So I think I just used Moonlight Sonata for a lot of it, which is kind of a creepy sounding. But yeah, audio is essential. It's imperative that you nail the audio for a horror experience. And I was working from a minimalist standpoint, and it really was a challenge. But using those old speech synthesizers was definitely a boon to the entire experience. Thank you.
I immediately responded to this game because some of the only games that have actually really scared me in my life have been Atari 2600 games. When I was a kid, I was terrified of the dragons in Adventure.
In Adventure, right?
And I saw an Adventure key in there, so that was nice, too.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we got a question back here.
So I was wondering, did creepypasta influence you at all? Because there's like one in particular, like the story about NES Godzilla that reminds me a lot of this.
That's a good.
Yeah, I just wondered about that.
Thank you, Sam. I did a lot of research. I tried to stray away from creepypasta. I researched Connecticut. Connecticut, for some reason, is like a paranormal hotbed. Anybody from Connecticut here? Because they've all been spirited away by the demons. If they were here, I would be like, what's your state's problem? But there's a lot of material, and I tried to research like real hauntings. Like I went on the paranormal Reddit, and I just refreshed constantly. I was like, okay, I need someone's like real life accounts of something creepy that happened to them. I do enjoy a good creepypasta, but I tried to stray away from things like that. And instead, I focused on older, and by older I mean pre-1990, 1985 supernatural horror movies, and real accounts from people. Please.
Interested, you were talking about your visual style being inspired by early era PC games, Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. I mean, I definitely see the early PC in the color palette because that orange brown instead of like the dark yellow. But what are some games on those platforms that you find creepy to play? I'm sure that have inspired you in the past.
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I never liked when I was a kid. I remember second grade getting on those old Apple machines and playing the Oregon Trail. Like if you wanted to trade with someone or went to a shopkeeper, there would just be this kind of clustery, pixely shopkeeper guy looking at you with like a coonskin cap and stuff, and it just kind of stared at you. So when I was a kid, I kind of found that aesthetic kind of weird because I found it unsettling because I couldn't fully comprehend what I was looking at. I don't know if the guy was like smiling at me creepily or like, baring his teeth at me and growling. I don't know. I just thought of stuff like that. There was also Adventure, definitely. There was also this, I believe it was an old MS-DOS game about skiing, and every now and then the freaking Yeti would come and get you. Yeah, Ski Free. I remember playing that game, and The Yeti in that game is was very influential on a certain monster or a certain demonic entity that you will find in Faith. What's another one? Number Munchers or Math Munchers, if anyone remembers playing that. The Troggles. And you know what? When they would eat you, they would look at the screen and grin at you. Like, come on. And again, there's that fear of the unknown because the Troggles are they're like this Cthulhu mythos thing. They're not fully comprehensible by us mortals visually. So there are several aesthetic influences, not a lot of, just a few scary influences, but a lot of it was just trying to nail that aesthetic more than anything.
Well, we got one from Jason back here.
Hi, I
Howdy.
did come in a little late, so just let me know if you've already addressed this.
Sure.
But and I like horror a lot.
We've already addressed that. I'm just kidding.
But one thing that when I think about it as a genre, I think about how like it seems to depend a lot on novelty and surprise and the unfamiliar. So it seems like a genre where like once a technique is proven, it kind of stops working.
Yeah.
And tropes maybe get worn out faster than in other genres. I mean, do you feel that that's the case?
Yes, I totally agree with that statement. I feel like after the original Slender Man came out, well, like in 2011, and it blew everyone's minds and whatever, it was real novel. We had all the Slender clones afterwards, right? And that was so droll. And then FNAF came out, and it changed the whole indie horror dynamic, and then everybody wanted to make FNAF clones. And so I don't know where we're at right now. I really hope this retrograde horror thing keeps going, especially people like Puppet Combo. 98 D-Make made a game called September 99. That's a free game on Steam. It's a 5-minute horror experience. So I really hope that we stray away from copycats, although in clones, although it's totally fine to be inspired by other works and other methods of scaring. My argument is that we look back at the times when hardware limitations really forced developers to work in terms of design and just basic primal like suspense and fear. And that's kind of where I hope the landscape goes in the future. Thank you.
It definitely seems by like going more abstract and less specific, you kind of maintain a little bit more of that power for a little bit longer because it could mean different things to different people. Let's have a round of applause for Mason. You guys can check out Faith tonight at the party at the Museum of Human Achievement. It opens at 8. Next up, we're going to talk to Jerry Belich and Mike Enoch about Ghost Dentist VR. Can you guys switch it over?
I got you.
Take this opportunity once again to thank our sponsors, Unreal Engine, Devolver Digital, Huegos Rancheros, hey, that's us, Ugly Machine, NVIDIA, Annapurna Interactive, 22nd Century Toys, Panic Button, Farcade, Finji, Alchemy Labs, Red Hook, Toy Joy, Alamo, and Mondo. These glasses work, man. I could see all the way up at the podium.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Jerry. Hi. This is Mike. I like to call him Mickey. We were testing that out, seeing how it felt.
It's okay. It's totally fine for everyone else to call me Mickey, too. Should I tell them why?
Sure, yeah. It's a good story.
So I'm Mike Enoch. My name is actually Mike Enoch. There's another guy. His name is Mike something else. And he's decided to call himself Mike Enoch, but he's an alt-right racist scumbag. And if you search for my name, Mike Enoch, on the internet, the first thing you'll find is a Wikipedia article about him. So I'm not that Mike Enoch. I'm the other one. And the reason I was thinking about trying out different names is because he's kind of got the real estate on the internet already. So that's the crappy story. But there you go.
Yeah, if you're scummy enough, you get better search results. So that's cool. So we're going to go with Mickey. We're going to talk about Ghost Dentist VR, which is far less, both as a presentation and a game, far less prepared and researched than Faith. That's not a bad thing. That's not an insult.
That stuff is cool, man.
It's different. It's different. We do a different thing, and that's okay. No, I'm actually really excited to play your game. I did not previously know about it, and I live in a really creepy place, so I would like to play it there.
Okay.
And that'll be great. So I guess the beginning of Ghost Dentist starts, what was it, 2017 Train Jam, was that?
Yeah.
2017 Train Jam. It's not actually the beginning of it, but it was when it happened. So it was about 9 months prior to that. Yeah, this is us on the train making things. About 9 months prior to that, I was talking with Lisa Brown, who's very awesome. She is a designer at Bungie working on Destiny stuff. And we were talking about VR things. There's Lisa. And I was getting really, really frustrated because I was very excited about VR and finally was getting my hands on VR equipment and getting to try stuff out. And I was very annoyed with everybody wanting to make bad jump scare horror in VR. Because I also very much love horror, and I love spiritual horror and creepy, dread-filling horror, but I hate the jump scare kind. It really, really upsets me. And so I made this I wanted to make this kind of as revenge a little bit. I don't know if that's a good motivation for making something.
Great motivation.
I was just what can I do that is kind of horrible, not necessarily scary, but unsettling and creepy in VR that I can make people play, and they won't know if they actually want to or not, and they won't particularly know if they actually enjoyed it. And since I figured whatever I did in VR was probably not going to make any money, why not? It was kind of on an equal playing field. So a little bit before Train Jam, there was a Train Jam Slack, so you could kind of connect with people beforehand. And I was talking to Lisa, and that I was frustrated because I was originally going to be making this game as a part of an MFA terminal degree that I'm working on that I didn't want. So that's a whole nother story. So, but I couldn't. Things got too crazy. And so I was talking to Lisa, and she's like, well, why don't you just make it on the train? And I was like, making a VR game on a train, that sounds like a very terrible idea. And which, once again, since this was all steeped in making something that was kind of a terrible idea, felt right. So on the Slack, how did I get in touch with you?
Yeah, no problem.
He basically went on Slack and he said, is anyone crazy enough to bring a VR kit onto the train? And I was like, I was thinking about it, but then I thought, no, that's stupid. How am I going to run a VR kit on the train? But then when I saw the message, I was like, yeah, I was thinking about it. And then you sort of DM'd me the idea, and then I was like, yep, abso-freaking-lutely, I'm definitely going to do this on the train somehow. And I didn't have a VR laptop at the time. So
It's actually a high budget for this stupid game.
So yeah, I bought a new laptop to bring on the train as well. Although Lisa had one, but then that wasn't going to run with Oculus because Oculus just changed the drivers around and they required a specific chipset. So the Oculus kit stopped working, and so we only had one laptop which is VR capable.
Yeah. So, and the other thing I did after getting in touch with Mickey was I had also run into Ellie on Slack. And Ellie is an amazing human that does many, many musics for many, many, many games. And I said, hey, I need a song, and this is before Train Jam started. I was like, I need a song that's like spooky, but also you're in like a waiting room. And 30 minutes later, they sent me an MP3 that had the theme that's, I'm sure hopefully we'll be able to hear when we run it, but is really, really fantastic. And I was like, oh, this is really coming together for something that shouldn't, which really has to frustrate you with all the like good ideas that you have, that you're like, I want to make this real game. This is going to be meaningful, and nothing works out at all. Which just goes to show, like, the universe hates us all. Or it loves the wrong people at the wrong times. So, and the other thing I tend to do is make a lot of like hardware, electronic, contraption-y stuff. So I had a bunch of electronic components on the train, and so, of course, if you're going to do dental work, you need to like have some kind of haptic feedback for that. So you need to be able to feel what you're doing. You need to be able to track what you're doing. So I worked on building what we call the VibraJaw, which is a strap on mask thing that tracks how open and closed your mouth is in VR. So there it is without the VR headset. And so those two alligator clips you see, that there's kind of like a black stretchy rubber band that comes out of them, and that rubber band changes its resistance when it's stretched, which means like I loop it up through the VR headset and back down to the other alligator clip, so you can see it going up, across, and down, and that's completing a circuit. And so the little microcontroller, the teensy on the side of my head, is reading the resistance change as I open and close my mouth, and we're mapping that to the character model in the game that's opening and closing its mouth. And then there are vibrational motors, kind of like are in your cell phone, sewn in along the jawline so that when you are drilling your teeth, you get to feel it, vibrating your teeth, which... Somebody in, we had it at a maze in Berlin, and somebody had commented, I hadn't really thought about this before, but they said that it felt like a little too realistic, because usually if you're getting this kind of dental work done, you get anesthetic. And so you have this disassociation with the sensation and the pain. And the fact that they didn't actually feel the drilling, but they could feel the vibration, they could feel things happening, and they had the sound effects and all this stuff, that it felt very, very much like that horrible sensation of like someone chipping away at your teeth. And I was so happy. So yeah, the Train Jam was a wild ride. We had the... Mickey found a wonderful little spot to do the actual VR development. And Oculus, so you made a VR room. You decided Oculus over, what's the other one, Vive? Yeah, because of the mounting of the trackers was going to be a problem. And at least with the Oculus, you could just put the little camera stands down. So there he is. It's like this little luggage space. And there's just enough room to put 2 cameras in there so he could sit there and hunch in and VR away while I'm somewhere on the train soldering, and Lisa's getting rid of all of our scope and telling us we couldn't have all the things we wanted. So I was like, I want the blood. And
Lisa gave us the teeth.
oh yeah, we had the teeth. Look at those. The little blocky, I can't zoom. I don't know how this computer works. Yeah, so it was a kind of a wonderful hot mess during the process on the train, and the demo that we made there didn't change very much for quite a while. This is the patient. So
Tried a real one.
yeah, funny thing, like spatially, when you're working in VR. Turns out people's heads and their teeth are very small. Like, really, really, really small. Like, it's hard doing dentistry on real people. and they're there. So like doing it with like tracking and equipment on you like suddenly gets very, very cumbersome. So the patient model kind of expanded as a result and slowly turned into basically a Muppet. And it still feels pretty good because it still kind of encompasses your head space and the fact that your mouth tracks with it. There are certain things that it seems like the human brain, like if you get these certain boxes ticked, it's willing to like let a lot of other details go in terms of embodiment and like how we actually see ourselves and how we identify where we are in space. Yeah, tracking your mouth, I guess, is one of them because that's pretty effective. Let's see. So we had it for demo right after Train Jam because I think we just really wanted to be able to prove that we did it, like at all. And it's kind of a tough game to demo in a lot of ways, at least properly, because especially at this time, dealing with the Vibrajaw and the connecting it like over serial was a huge pain, and the serial libraries that were available in C#, it's just all a mess. And so dumb. So we at least got to prove that it actually worked. And then basically we just kept bringing it to different festivals, which forced us to actually fix a lot of the very little broken things. Now, the fact that it's a ghost, that was a very new thing that happened on the train. Because originally it was just, I just wanted to do a very normal like self-dentistry game. But there's a fundamental problem there with the game loop. And like, how is this going to be a replayable thing? Because how often do you actually go to the dentist? It's like, if you have insurance, maybe twice a year. And even then, it's probably just a cleaning. So like, after you've fixed your teeth, what the hell then? So I was like, oh, I've got it. You're dead. And you're a ghost, and you have a dental practice, so you just possess the patients, and then you do the dental work on them, on yourself. So now you can have people with different conditions coming in, different problems, and then like fix their issues, and then plus you get to make money off them, and then they go away, and then somebody else comes in, and they have a whole new problem. So like, bam! By killing the dentist, like we've got like a path forward for a game loop, so that something interesting can happen. Of course, we never got around to that part in terms of like having different patients with different conditions. So kind of died for nothing. So this is the first ghost, which is basically a beach ball with a semi-translucent, very chunky cloth sim running over it, and really, really, really slow text that is non-skippable, which is always the way to do text, especially when you're in a lot of time constraints on a train. Oh, there he is. Thanks for seeing me. Yeah, so one of the first things, of course, that we realized was, well, you need to be able to see what you're doing, right? And I think everybody that's gone to the dentist, you remember that like articulatable light that they're always like putting over your face, and it's very blinding. So we're like, oh, we'll just stick a mirror on one of those. And that worked out actually pretty well. And since we already killed off the dentist, and it was getting a little weird and spooky anyways, we just figured we could throw the tools around and they kind of float around, and don't need to explain that as much. Boy, he really talks forever, doesn't he? It's like he's monologuing Shakespeare.
Worst dentist patient ever.
He really is. Well, okay. Oh, so now Mickey has is inside of the patient, which we really wanted to kind of take advantage of the fact that there is another life there. Like, it's not just you taking over this like empty vessel. They're alive. So their tongue will like avoid your tools. We also really wanted to like the
sound for that.
oh, where's
The sound should be connected. Oh, you're muted.
make it not mute. Computer,
Xbox,
unmute. Okay, so just going back for a second to the soundtrack. Yeah, no, this is good. Well, so listen to the music for a second. This is what Ellie did in like 30 minutes with a nonsensical prompt. Yeah, it's good. It's so good. And then we did a bunch of weird, like, 'cause dentists are always trying to talk to you, like it's funny to them to like ask you questions that you can't answer like a normal person. Which also comes back to like one of the things I liked about this whole idea in the Vibrajaw was, is there a way to make people in VR look dumber? Like, is there any way we can make people in... Nobody's going to listen to me now that they're seeing that.
Oh, no. That's some Ren and Stimpy stuff right there, man.
Oh, yeah, just... There we go. Listen to that. Now just imagine this is in stereo and way louder. Also, it's your face. Just keep on drilling. There were a lot of things we didn't get to in the first version. Like, we really wanted to do more with the eyes. They do follow the tools and the hands, as you can see. We also noticed that right away players loved, like, you know the kind of player that's like, they're immediately trying to stick the drill in their eye. Which in this version we hadn't quite had time to address. And it's all very disembodied and a little bit crude. But it worked. Like, after 2.5 days on a train, we had a fully functional VR experience that felt terrible, but didn't make you sick, which I thought was a huge win, because I'm very susceptible to, like, motion sickness, and so, like, where are the games for me? Where are the games that don't make me motion sick, just unhappy?
Jerry, have you ever publicly apologized for making this?
I think you should now.
I mean, could I apologize in the form of maniacal laughter? Because then I would.
That's not an apology, Jerry.
Well, maybe it's opposite day, Adam. So, do we want to?
Yeah. I mentioned the tooth thing as well.
Oh yeah.
So while we were demoing at GDC, we had this quite nice setup. I thought it'd be funny to get some mint stuff for people after they've been doing their dentistry. And so I had a mint in my mouth while I was waiting for the next player to come up, and someone came up wanting to play, and I was like, oh, I need to get rid of this mint pretty quick. So I chewed it, which broke off part of my tooth. so I was demoing for the rest of the day with a broken tooth, and
The simulation has become a reality.
yeah, I had to go home and go to the dentist afterwards and explain to her why I'd broken my tooth and what I was doing at the time. I said, oh yeah, I made a VR game about being a dentist. So I just wanted to mention that before we put someone else in there.
Should we do that? Should we get
Yeah, we need a volunteer.
Yeah,
preferably someone
who has not played it?
who hasn't played it and doesn't need glasses. 'Cause I'm gonna take
We're gonna make Steph be our
All
volunteer.
right.
because I made her come down here and do a panel without a computer.
Oh, sweet.
So, as I had said before, like every time that we've shown it, we've tried to kind of punch it up a little bit and find some ways to improve. And like Mickey and I try to really figure out what's the crappiest thing that we can bump up so it's a little bit more even. Because the problem with games like this is if you make one thing look good or feel really good and everything else is still kind of a hot mess of like game jam prototyping, then the whole thing still feels awful. So every time we very, very carefully like, okay, here's our wish list. Here are all the things that would be really, really nice to have, but be really careful not to overdo it. We got it. Thankfully, after a maze, we got a lot of things fixed. And actually, over this last month, it's probably made the biggest leap of anything else. Because what you saw before was pretty similar to how it looked up until, like 3 weeks ago. And now, we've got fur shaders. Because we decided we really just had to lean into the Muppet thing. It's a hot glue gun because it's a Muppet.
That's great.
And that's a hand drill. Very nice and improved. And we got a whole dentist office. Turns out, like, there's just models out there for everything. And now, finally, if you put things into your eye, it'll actually close your eyes. There's so many little treats. I don't know how much to share. There we go. Oh.
What's the red flashing? Are you losing health?
Oh yeah, she's dying.
Hey, what kind of game is this?
You need the syringe.
You're a ghost.
The syringe. There, just jab it in there. Get in the gums. Oh. He dead.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You can see the ghost is dramatically improved. It's just you in a costume, though. Oh goodness. I don't know what else to even say about this.
Do you want to?
Enough said.
Yeah. Sorry. A real sorry would be great.
I'll say sorry after tonight. So tonight at the Witch House, we will have the Vibrajaw. And you will get to experience it unlike anything else. It's the first time that we're showing it with a complete like visual upgrade. There's a lot of new little things, physics stuff. The teeth. If you totally drill, just keep drilling. Just drill that tooth out. Oh, you do need anesthesia.
You should have mentioned
Keep
that.
forgetting about that.
Yeah, that would.
Oh, the logo on the door. So I went on Facebook because we're like, oh, we did such a great visual upgrade, which is mostly Mickey. We need a logo for this stupid game. And so I was like, is anybody willing to like just quickly help whip us up a logo? So Robin Baumgartner put that together, and he posted it as a joke, and he actually direct messaged me and apologized for it. Because he's like, do you want me to take it down? Is that going to stop actual artists from, like, helping? And I was like, I don't know, probably, but I don't care because that's what we wanted. So that's a Robin Baumgartner logo.
I'm sure plenty of people in the audience would like to make
What
you
did you
answer for
inject
this. Does anyone have any
Juice.
questions?
I love the hot glue gun so much.
Stunned to silence. Sam, do we have any?
So
oh,
there wasn't a whole lot of research here, so I don't have a whole lot of background to talk about. I didn't have any paintings.
This is what you had.
I did I've been to dentists out. Okay, truth time, real truth. I actually really enjoy the dentist.
you are a sick puppy.
I like
Belich.
the sensation of the metal scraper on my teeth, and I swear to God, that could put me to sleep. So, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for being broken as a human. Like,
There's a lot of truth.
my nervous system is messed up, maybe. I don't know. But I really like it. Like, I don't even mind the drilling too much. And I think needles are fine.
The eyes are dilating.
Oh, yeah, because they're real high. If you get a tooth, like, completely drilled, that's what's going Keep going. Oh, yeah. Come on, get that tooth out. Yeah, go for it. Just
She
keep-
died the last time you
Come
told
on.
her to do that.
It's okay. She's struck up.
No, she's shrugged up. She's fine. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Yeah,
Yes. Drill more. Gosh, your teeth are impenetrable. What's happening?
You're the one who made this
I
game.
think they need a cleaning.
Yay! Look down! Look down! There it is! That's what we
There's the
do.
maniacal laughter.
That was on our feature list. Oh, anything you want to say, Mickey?
There is the story I showed the train where we're trying to show it to.
Oh,
There's a documentary crew on the train,
Oh, yeah, that's
and they were like really keen to see the game. So they were like, they paged us over the intercom saying, "Please come to the observation car and show the game." So we were like, "Well, we can't take all the VR kit there. Maybe they just want to see us to talk to us." So we like ran all the way up the length of the train, and they're like, "Where's the game?" We were like, "Well, we can't show it. It's in the VR room." They're like, "All right, let's go there." So we all ran back the other way, and then I boot up my laptop, and what do I get? I get-
Windows update!
Yay!
How long had it been offline?
It had been offline for 2.5 days because there's no Wi-Fi on the train, and it must have like kept a backup of an upgrade.
Saved
Oh,
one.
they know.
It saved one, and
They
it
know.
decided at that moment because I closed the laptop and then opened it again. It forced me into an update cycle on the train. It was
Yeah.
an absolute nightmare. But
There was that. Oh, and there was. Yeah, so we had the entire crew there, and we're sitting waiting with the giant, like, pink Windows Update screen forever. Oh, and was it we temporarily broken the VibraJaw communication. So when the documentary crew, I don't know if this documentary is ever gonna like see the light of day, but you'll know the truth. When we were showing it off, we secretly wired up one of the controller buttons to control the jaw as well, and I was pretending to control it with my mouth for the camera because we had just screwed it up. And I was like, well, it's close enough to the truth as anything on TV is, so that was fine. But yeah, it was a mess. It was a hot mess, but it was really fun. It was really fun to make something
Should we
this
relieve
pointless.
Stephanie from this horrible
Is
burden?
there a win?
Oh yeah,
Like,
she's still
Can we
in
get a
there.
round of applause for our test subject, Steph Franciotti?
Like, is there a win condition? Can you just finish?
Oh
the plane
yeah,
and leave?
yeah, you can win.
Okay.
You gotta fix the teeth though. You gotta get all that gunk out, and then you gotta find the cavities. You can use a scraper to tap them, and like if they like wiggle around and they're kind of loose, then you want to drill those. I don't know. Are there any questions or anything?
Yeah, we can take questions from the audience, and also, Sam, if you see any questions from the stream, we can get to those too. JW, what do you got to say?
Yeah. I love this ghost.
So this is like a two-part question. Have
Yeah.
you ever had a real dentist play the game, and were they really good at it?
I don't think we've had a real dentist. We did have a little boy who had never been to a real dentist play.
Oh, great work. Great work.
Yeah, his dad let him do it. So we put the Vibraja on everything because I was like, if he's gonna do it, he's doing the full experience. So he was a young kid, never been to the dentist before. So he got this is his first memory, and he did all right. That's all. Yeah, that was at a maze. That was in Germany. I don't know if are there any dentists here? Because that'd be such a great opportunity. I don't know. If anybody knows a dentist, invite him tonight.
Is there going to be nitrous oxide at the party tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That was not the correct answer to that question, but I'm excited now.
Yeah, that's why we got our own rooms just pumped in. Oh, there's the really cool Windows Update screen that was there for absolutely ever. Any other questions or thoughts?
Any questions about
Should we
Windows
sell
Update?
this?
Twitch chat wants
Finally,
to know,
a use for my Steam developer account.
Twitch chat wants to know if there's going to be an orthodontist DLC.
Ooh, actually, we did talk about not orthodontistry per se, but we talked about what if we make a VR like hospital game that's just episodic, like all the terrible hospital shows on, and it's all Muppets. And so it's like every episode, like 15, 20 minutes of play, and patients come in, and like, you open them up, and there's stuffing, and then like, and you're having like also like secret relationships with some of the other doctors and people, or like something that shouldn't happen with a patient. I don't know, but
just stop.
My question is for the organizers. Can we call the police, please?
That's not a question,
Can
though.
we call the police?
Yeah, that's actually not a question.
Thank you.
That was
I think
more
this
of a
is beyond
demand.
the police. I think we should call the FBI. All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience or from the stream? All right, everybody, round of applause for our guests. I'm excusing Steph from talking because she doesn't have a computer. But please come to the party tonight and check out Diana the Huntress. Do you have like a one-sentence pitch for Diana? Come on.
Yeah. So Diana the Huntress was a game that me and my friend Morgan made. Her grandfather was a detective on this really creepy case that happened in West Virginia in the 1970s. And it's basically like a point-and-click Maniac Mansion kind of adventure game where and it's just exploring the different possibilities that were never explored in real life in that case. So I guess, how do I summarize the case really quickly? There's these two co-eds that went to West Virginia University, and they were hitchhiking home, and they got picked up, and they never came home. And so yeah, this is just like exploring what could have happened. I don't know what else to say. Good, let me slink off the stage.
Did they ever catch the person who did it?
Well, they pinned it on somebody, but I don't think it was the person who did it. And so Morgan, where are you? Please help me. She should be here somewhere. They actually did pin it on a dentist. There is
What?
a dentist. Morgan, she has like a lot more answers than I do. Can you explain the case in a very snapshot way?
Adam's like on the
Hi,
edge of a seat.
I'm Morgan.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi, I'm from West Virginia. That's where the story takes place, and it was in the 70s. There were some college students hitchhiking, and they were hitchhiking home. They got picked up, and then, sorry, I ran up the stairs. For a while, they were following a few different leads. There were actually way too many leads for what ended up happening. One of them was a dentist. Yes. Who had been, I don't know if he was ever convicted or if he was just accused of rape.
He was a creepy dentist who, like, I mean, he molested people while they were, like, under anesthesia.
Our game does not do that. just so you know.
So basically, they followed a lot of leads, and what ended up happening was they got a letter from a triangle cult, and the triangle cult led them to the bodies. They followed the directions and found the bodies buried in the woods, like 10 miles outside of town, and they found the bodies and they were beheaded.
Okay. So a triangle.
Tell us more.
Yeah, that sounds very nebulous.
Is that like a pyramid scheme but more advanced?
The triangle cult, it was actually like just a regular Christian church, but they were like channeling. This is real life, by the way. This is not just in the game. This is real life. The Christian church in the tiny town of Morgantown, they were like communicating with spirits that said, that told them where the bodies were, which to me really means that they probably did it, but apparently they were completely cleared of that. So what ended up happening was they started writing letters to the police. They started writing letters to one of the girl's roommates and one of her parents, saying, and they were signing at Triangle. And they were like giving them directions on like where to find clues and the bodies and everything, and yet they didn't do it. That we know.
It's like an escape room.
Supposedly they didn't do it. They did follow about 11 or 12 different leads where they, the suspects actually had similar crimes, which is really creepy that in a small town in West Virginia there would be that many people who had committed or could have committed beheadings. So yeah.
Can we collab on Faith Chapter 3? Because that's like fascinating. That's like a Netflix series like already.
We can help with dentist part.
Yeah, that was kind of what drove the game. Was like, me and Morgan worked together. She told me this story, and I was like, that is so fucked up and weird. Why has nobody made a movie or a game or something about it? And so then we just host it and got it done.
Well, I'm sure they're not copywriting.
I don't know if she mentioned this before I ran up the stairs to get in here, but they did convict someone. My grandfather did work on the case, and he said even like up until his death that the person that they convicted, he didn't believe did it, and there were a couple other people investigating the case that didn't believe that he did it either, and that it was just the state of West Virginia trying to get a conviction. So we think that the killer is out there, probably dead. Older dead, but yeah.
Any questions?
So first off, tell us about because you've actually been over at the party and you've gotten to see what's going on. You've been working on it over there. So first off, tell us a little bit about how it's going to be presented at the party, and two, is there any way for people that aren't going to be able to make it tonight to the party? Is it available online or anything like that to play?
It definitely will be. So it's just like at the party, and then you should play it. We just set it up right now. It's not in a cabinet, it's on a computer, and we plan to have it online soon. We're gonna have like a list that you guys can put your names on if you want us to send it to you. So yeah.
Do we have any questions for any of our panelists up here tonight, or do you guys have any questions for one another? Do you guys want this one?
Hello? Oh, this one works.
Hello? Oh, this works again.
Yeah, we do have an AV person who can adjust.
That's so cool. It's magic. So, like, we've never actually released any version of Ghost Dentist before, but I had an idea. If you write your email address on a $5 bill and give it to either of us, we'll just email you one. it's a real offer. That's how we're gonna do it. 'Cause fuck Steam.
You know they're here, right?
Love you, Steam. Mwah. But yeah, just be legible.
If you're Steam, then it needs to be $100 bill.
Oh, one final comment. If you come up with a very good pun name for a medical drama VR puppet show, please let me know. It's really contingent on figuring that out.
James has a question. Yeah. So we're gonna have a real dentist at the party tonight. Oh,
no,
efforts,
he
okay.
promised. He
Do we get
pledged.
those blood bears? Good, we're working on the blood bears.
Wait, what? So far I've heard nitrous oxide and blood bears. You guys are just going to have to come to the party tonight and find out. So once again, the party is going to be at a place called the Museum of Human Achievement. It is not on Google Maps. The closest street approximation is 3600 Lyons Road. It's very close to a place called Canopy. We're going to be opening it up at 8 o'clock, and it's going to be badass. Do you have anything? You were signaling me? You guys giving me secret signals? Let's get it. Oh, we've got more questions. Hold on. Oh, for me. It is open to the public. It is open to the public. Donations are appreciated. They will go to Juegos Rancheros and the Museum of Human Achievement, which helps us put on events like this. But yeah, bring your friends. It'll be a lot of fun. We've got one more. 8 till whenever it's a party. It'll go late. All right. The police will not be able to find. We hope the police will not be able to find it. Costumes are strongly encouraged. I know that's a hard road to hoe when you're visiting a strange town, but we have a place here called. That's a saying. We say this is the South. We say stuff like that. You guys never heard that? We have a place here called Lucy in Disguise. It's like a costume shop. It's kind of South Austin. You could always go to Target or something. Yeah. All right. Thank you all for being a part of this. Let's get a. Will you have something else, Jerry?
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna say if anybody. So there was a more horrifying idea that we'd had. That
great!
Was
Lay
rejected.
it on.
There's more.
If we've got 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Sure. So I was pitching to Mickey a VR game that was about tailoring, like sewing, and the idea was you begin the game, you're in your kind of hideout, and you've already got all the bodies, and you're trying to sew
Just like normal tailors.
a nice people suit before the cops get there. And he didn't love it.
I can tell the audience.
I told him if we used fur, then maybe it'd be a bit more acceptable.
Once again, Muppets makes it work, and so we're gonna go back to hot glue and just skinning them.
That's actually the good thing about the Muppet in the game is it takes the edge off. Like you get the body horror from doing the dentistry to yourself, but because of the Muppet, it lets people kind of think that it's going to be okay and that they're not going to freak out. So I think adding Muppets to all your crazy ideas is the way to make them acceptable, more accessible.
Yeah. All right, we should probably go.
God damn it. Everybody, a warm round of applause for all of our guests. And come check out the Real World Witch House party tonight at the Museum of Human Achievement. We're going to go ahead and, assuming that everybody's paid their bills and tipped their hardworking wait staff, we're going to go ahead and clear the theater for a break, let our servers clean up a little bit. We're going to be back in here at 2 o'clock with Paloma Dawkins and Molly Soda. And wait, Paloma, how do you say, it's Alejandro, right? Akuma. Paloma told me not to say Akuma the other night, so I forgot. Okay. And they're going to be showing off some more